this is also really interesting. So you guys will remember when I covered the story of luxury brands using Italian sweatshops and using undocumented workers to make a lot of their garments that cost very little to make compared to what they're selling it for. In this scandal, Armani was involved, Dior was involved. Now, they opened an investigation into these brands to actually look at how was this happening, what was the negligence that happened for this to even occur, and all these things. And Reuters were the people that, broke the initial article that everyone referenced. They're also the people that have been following the investigation. And they have some updates via this article, Inside Luxury Goods Broken Audit System. Now, we will actually read through it, but just to give you a summary of kind of what was said in the article, they essentially talk about how it's very difficult for a massive company to stay on top of every single part of the production process. And I definitely agree with that to an extent. Before I started consulting for some luxury brands, I definitely think I underestimated how difficult this can actually be from a logistics standpoint. But then my rebuttal to that would be, maybe that's because brands shouldn't seek to be so massive. Because as a company, if you're seeking to be a multi-billion-dollar company, then of course you're going to have so many moving parts to your business model that it becomes extremely difficult to stay on top of everything. I'm sure you guys have worked somewhere. I've worked somewhere too. I've literally been an employee where the manager isn't there for one day and then all of us are just kind of mucking about and doing rubbish. If you think of the production process in fashion, if you lose sight of your production just for one day and you're not on top of it, you can very quickly, things can go all over the place. That's kind of how difficult it is logistically to stay on top of these things. Now, that is not me absolving any of the critique or any of the responsibility on these companies, because they should also hire more people to take care of these things and to keep on top of these things, but they just choose not to. So I think two things can be true at once, right? So they are really talking about how difficult it is to stay on top of these things, and also loopholes that some of these companies take over and what they kind of take advantage of to be able to get away with these things. So yeah, let's read the article and go into some of the specifics. So it says, LVMH owned Dior's production arm in Italy manufactures Dior relied on formal inspections to assess working and safety standards inside its supply chain last year. In some cases, such certifications miss glaring problems. A Reuters review of unpublished court documents has found AZ Operations, a subcontractor of manufacturers Dior, tasked with the production of leather items based near Italy's fashion capital of Milan, was accused by Italian prosecutors in June of being a front for an operation that exploited workers. However, AZ Operations passed 2 environmental and social inspections in 2023 in January and July, according to unpublished audit documents reviewed by Reuters. So, this is very important to take note of because, like they've said, the system is broken. The way that they do these audits are broken. So, a company that was literally being used as a front for an operation that exploited workers was not found to have any wrongdoing in 2 audits in 2023. They passed 2 environmental and social inspections in 2023. So that tells you that something needs to be done about the way that they do these inspections and about the process by which they go about determining how someone passes a social inspection or an environmental inspection. Can you imagine how the hell can a company that is using undocumented workers, paying them less than minimum wage, you're breaking 2 laws. You're breaking the law because you're not supposed to hire someone that isn't illegally there. That's illegal. You're breaking the law because you're paying someone less than minimum wage. That's illegal. Like, breaking all these laws, and somehow they passed the social inspections twice in 2023. How? Like, how is that even possible? But continuing on. Widespread Milan investigations have uncovered malpractice inside the Italian luxury goods supply chain of Dior, Giorgio Armani, and Alvario Martini this year, Reuters has previously reported. The audit papers, along with court documents, Reuters interviews with more than 24 luxury sector workers, auditors, supply chain managers, suppliers, lawyers, industry experts, executives, and trade union representatives reveal the pervasiveness of ineffective checks of social and environmental standards inside Italy's sprawling luxury supply chain. And this is why, before I continue reading, this is exactly why I say that even though it's very hard to stay on top of these things for a lot of these companies, and I do think that I underestimated it before I started working with some of these companies, they can do more if they cared. That's why I never, ever, ever will believe anyone that's from a luxury conglomerate that says they care about sustainability. Because people that care about sustainability or, social ethics will go further than what the checks are. Because clearly these social checks aren't up to scratch, because you literally have an illegal enterprise passing these checks. But as a company, if you care, you don't care about whatever terrible checks they are doing. You will have your own internal checks and hold your company to a higher standard. That is what people that care about these things do. So if you're not doing that, I will just not take you seriously. If you say, oh, we have this sustainable collection or all this kind of stuff, it's not to be taken seriously. And I don't know why anyone actually believes any of these companies when they say those kind of things. I don't understand. People are like, oh my God, like this brand is like known for sustainability. And I'm like, are we living in La La Land? Are we dancing in the Wizard of Oz? Like what is going on there? But reading on, in the case of AZ Operations, a 3-page assessment on the letterhead from compliance management company Fair Factories Clearinghouse, FFC, carried out by monitor Adamo Adriano on January 18th, 2023, stated that AZ Operations did not have subcontractors. The audit listed no irregularities. Damn, they named and shamed the person who carried out. Damn, this is some serious journalism. They said carried out by monitor Adamo Adriano. They named and shamed. Damn, that's crazy. I never would have thought they would do that. And they literally said the audit listed no irregularities. They're essentially saying, hello, person, you are terrible at your job. In July 2023, a further audit by Davide Albertario Milano SRL, a large direct supplier of manufacturers Dior that worked with AZ Operations, also found no non-conformities and certified the work was carried out to a high standard and in accordance with contractual terms. That's even worse. They doubled down. They were like, there are no non-conformities and we are certifying that the work is carried out to a high standard and in accordance with contractual terms. That's wild. Despite passing the audits, a police investigation into its 2023 activities found AZ Operations was de facto non-existent, according to Milan court documents. Furthermore, police inspections in April 2024 alleged the company was a front for a separate business, New Leather Italy, that exploited undocumented workers in sweatshop-like conditions, the same documents showed. So you see what I mean? The actual auditors, whose job it is to actually look at these things, and sometimes these people get paid off by these massive companies, by the way, but they're paid off in a way where it's not traceable. So none of the blame can go back to these massive conglomerates, which is why they're like, there is absolutely no wrongdoing. And it took the actual police to do an investigation to find this stuff out. So if they didn't do something that caught the police's attention for the police to actually do an investigation, no one would still know about this stuff. See how insane this is? Just see how insane it is. But anyway, going on, it says, that discovery was one of the factors that prompted Milan's prosecutors to put manufacturers Dior under court administration in June. Dior and LVMH did not respond to multiple requests for comment about Reuters' findings, including the audits and on the process to inspect external manufacturers in Italy. Of course, I love in every article that's kind of, investigative journalism where they're really looking deep into the practices of these companies. They always ask for comment, knowing fully well that these companies obviously are not going to say anything. And they always have that, they always have that sentence where it's like, we requested for comment, all to no avail. It's so funny when they do that. Because of course, they're not going to say anything. They are not going to further implicate themselves in the matter. But reading on, it says, in a July statement following revelations from the Milan prosecutors' inquiries, Dior said it firmly condemned illegal practices discovered at two of its contractors, saying such unworthy acts contradicted its values and the code of conduct signed by these suppliers. Now let's pause there. Dior is saying that they firmly condemn the illegal practices. Why did it take a police investigation to find these things out when it was part of your supply chain? If you cared, and this is what I mean about when companies say things, you shouldn't believe it. If they cared, they would have someone who's inspecting these things regardless of whether auditors are doing these inspections or not. To say now that you've been caught by the police, and if the police never actually found these things out, business would have gone on as normal. 15 years from now, you'll still be producing using the same people. You wouldn't care one bit. The only reason why all of a sudden remember that they cared about illegal practices is because they were caught. So no one should believe anything that's coming from Dior in this conversation at all. You should not believe one word coming out of anyone's mouth from Dior, because it's not true. Going on, it says, aware of the gravity of the violations committed by these suppliers and the improvements to be made to its checks and procedures, the House of Dior is collaborating with the designated Italian administrator and the Italian authorities, the French brand also said at the time. Dior added in a statement that its teams are working intensely to reinforce the existing procedures. You see what I mean? Why are they working intensely now? Why weren't they doing that before they were caught? Do you see what I mean? People that actually care do it regardless. They don't only start working intensely to reinforce existing procedures when they've been caught. They don't wait for that to happen. That's why you can't take these companies seriously. You just have to see them for what they are. You just can't take them seriously at all. Let's see what else it says. Despite regular audits, these two suppliers had evidently succeeded in hiding these practices. After this article was published, FFC owner Worldly responded to Reuters' queries, saying it had never offered facility auditing services to what? Oh my God. Now they're saying we never offered them our services to actually audit our services. Damn. That's crazy. Adding, it asked that customers enlist external verifiers to ensure impartial, transparent audits. Wow. They threw the blame back onto Dior. They said, we ask our customers to enlist external verifiers to ensure impartial and transparent audits. Damn. Regarding the letterhead in the court documents, this is a template available to customers within the FFC platform, Worldly added in its statement. Adamo Adriano did not respond to Reuters' attempts to reach them. Once again, Reuters, what I love about Reuters is when they do investigative journalism, they do it like the old school, serious way. They name and shame. They mention everyone involved. They do not care. They do not. And they're like, Adriano did not respond for comment. Like, they are singling everyone out, and rightfully so. Rightfully so. I do think it's very important sometimes to name and shame people involved in these things, because this is the reason why fashion is still such an exploitative industry. So it's great to actually know what companies, what names are involved. It's very, very important, in my opinion. They also, so they talk about both people. They said Davide Albertario did not respond to queries by Reuters on inspections at AZ operations. New Leather Italy did not reply to Reuters' request for comment. Yeah, everyone went silent. They're like, we're going to give you the silent treatment. Global luxury groups, including LVMH, usually outsource most of their production to a myriad of external contractors, industry experts say. Many are based in Italy, famed for its artisanal skills and accounting for between 50% and 55% of the global production of luxury clothing and leather goods, consultancy Bain calculates. No matter how many controls we do, there is always something we miss. Renzo Rosso, founder of Italian fashion group OTB, which makes diesel clothing, told a business event in September in reference to the complexity of overseeing Italy's supply chain. So I agree with Renzo to an extent. Like I said, the more I get involved with some of these massive companies, the more I realize there are so many moving parts. It's so hard. However, it doesn't mean that these companies can't do more. So they can never just say it's hard and then leave it there. There's always more that they can do. So responsibility still needs to go on the people that run these massive companies. It's not enough to just be like, well, there are so many moving parts to, the supply chain, so it's really hard, and just leave it there. Where is the responsibility? There needs to be some level of responsibility put back on these companies. So while I do definitely agree with Renzo, there's also more that companies like OTB, like LVMH, like Richemont, like Kering can do to stay on top of these things, right? So yeah, two things can be true at once, as I always say. Despite the risks, insiders and experts told Reuters relying on suppliers is a deliberate strategy to keep costs down and manage demand. The fashion business model is driven by cost reduction tactics, leading fashion brands to switch suppliers, said Hakan Karosman, associate professor at Cardiff University, whose research focuses on supply chain sustainability. And that's kind of what I've said all the time, right? That the business model of these companies is literally driven, like this professor said, on cost reduction tactics. That goes back to what I was saying about capital. It's literally their business model to think of where they can cut costs. So it's only a matter of time before any brand that's known for craftsmanship won't be anymore because they're going to cut corners, because that is their business model. It literally the only way they continue to have growth and see growth year on year is to do that. It's just baked in naturally into their business model. Even though Dior did not directly abuse workers, the mechanism of labor exploitation was culpably fueled by manufacturer's Dior SRL, which did not carry out effective inspections or audits over the years to ascertain the actual working conditions and environment, Milan prosecutors said in June court documents. Currently, there is no firm legal requirement in Italy for luxury groups to audit their suppliers. This is a really important thing that was just mentioned. There is actually no legal requirement for luxury groups to audit their suppliers. And so brands that care won't care that there is no legal requirement for luxury groups to audit their suppliers. They will do it anyway. So the fact that these companies weren't doing it means that they don't care. And the only reason why they are doing it now is because they're under investigation. You see what I'm saying? So when these companies say, we do not agree with the working practices of one of our suppliers, it's like, well, you're culpable. You're part of it. You're not separate from it. But continuing on, it says, but poor oversights can clash with sustainability claims made to investors and consumers over craftsmanship and corporate and social responsibility standards, leading to reputational risks and in some cases civil liability if workers' exploitation is found within the supply chain. If I was to be honest, if I was the head of a massive conglomerate company, I would tell people never ever to bake sustainability into the marketing strategy. Ever. Because there is absolutely nothing sustainable about a lot of what they do. So there's just no argument you can make when you're constantly outsourcing, constantly trying to find the cheapest option, constantly like trying to produce more. You destroy garments that aren't sold. There is absolutely nothing sustainable about those companies. Just because you use dead stock fabric in one specialist collection does not make you sustainable when the wider business model of your company creates waste and you destroy products. So if I was the head of these companies, I would just completely separate myself from sustainability because there is absolutely nothing about the business model that would suggest that sustainability is possible. I don't know why they shoot themselves in the foot by saying we do this and it's so sustainable and we do that. Even if you are sustainable, I still wouldn't market it. Just let people find out about your practices rather than shouting from the rooftops about how sustainable you are and then we find out that you don't even have people that audit any part of your process. It's insane, to be honest. But continuing on, it says, LVMH, for example, said in its 2023 Social and Environmental Responsibility Report, it endeavors to ensure its suppliers and their service providers uphold human rights and to support them with applying the best possible employment, health and safety conditions. Well, they failed on that. Continuing on, the investigations into Italy's luxury supply chain have prompted some LVMH shareholders to ask the 330 billion behemoth owned by French billionaire Bernard Arnault to better monitor how its contractors treat workers. Damn, even the shareholders are asking questions. LVMH told a group of investors in November it was auditing all of its direct suppliers, and immediate contractors. In a subsequent statement to Reuters in November, LVMH said it had conducted more than 2,600 on-site audits globally this year. Now, this is really important because, once again, going back to the point about a lot of these companies saying that, there are so many moving parts to the business model of these companies that we struggle to stay on top of these things. Well, LVMH has just said they've basically proven to us that it's possible. They just chose not to. Because they said in 2024, they've conducted more than 2,600 on-site audits. Why didn't they do that before? Why is it now that all of a sudden they're under investigation? Now they're screaming to the rooftops about this year we've done 2,600 on-site audits. So they are basically, I don't think they know that they're doing this. I don't think they meant it, but I always analyze things. If you tell us that you've done 2,600 on-site audits this year, and by this year I mean in 2024, and they didn't do that before, it means they have the resources and the know-how to do it, but they didn't care enough before to do these audits. So what that tells me is that you never cared, and the only reason why you do these things is if you're under investigation or if you're exposed for having bad working practices. So when they have these business meetings where they're like, we ensure that we are making sure that every one of our partners has great working conditions and stuff like that, it literally is meaningless, completely meaningless. But continuing on, because this is a juicy article, this is fantastic, which is why I wanted to cover it in the stream. It says, Italy's antitrust authority said in July it was investigating whether Dior and Armani have misled consumers. In July, Armani expressed confidence in a positive result following the antitrust investigation, saying in a statement that its companies were fully committed to cooperating with the authorities and that it believed the allegations had no merit. That's crazy. Saying that they believe the allegations had no merit, knowing fully well the kind of scrutiny they were under. That is wild. That is wild. How can you say that with so much certainty? That's insane. I love this part of the article. Skin deep oversight. Brands dictate the depth. Yeah. Oh my God, they're cooking. They're saying exactly what I've been saying. Brands dictate the depth of the checks and the auditor's scope of actions, and inspections are often limited to direct suppliers and not to subcontractors, where the biggest problems usually lie. 4 auditors and luxury groups, supply chain managers Reuters spoke to said. So these are the actual auditors and luxury goods supply chain managers that are literally saying that ultimately the brands dictate the depth of the checks. So responsibility, once again, goes back onto these companies. Of course, to provide balance to it, it could also be the auditors, trying to protect their back and be like, it has nothing to do with us. It's all on the luxury brands, because everyone is running away from responsibility because this is a serious investigation that is going on right now. So everyone is shifting the blame. So that could also be a reason why they would say that. Even though I still do believe that, yes, a lot of it still goes down to the level of checks that these luxury brands and massive conglomerates require. That determines the level of the checks. But let's see. Audits tend to be planned in advance, allowing suppliers to paint a better picture. For instance, clearing promises of workers without proper contracts, these people said. On May 9th, 2023, for example, external auditor Adamo Adriano, wow, they're really naming and shaming this person, sent Paletterie Elisabetta Yang, another supplier of manufacturers Dior based near Milan, a written notice flagging that he would hold an inspection on the 26th of May 2023, the audit documents reviewed by Reuters show. So, first of all, okay, this shows that the auditing process of these companies is extremely flawed. How are you going to tell me in advance what day you're going to audit my company? Obviously, if you tell me in advance, I know exactly when you're coming. I'm just going to make sure that when you do the audit, everything is spick and span. That's a terrible way to do audits. In sports, they don't tell you when they're going to do a drugs test, which is why the testing for sports has become so good, because they test you randomly. You could literally be partying with your family in France and some random ass drugs tester knocks on your door and is like, yep, we're going to do a blood sample and a urine test. That's how they do some of these tests in sports. Why don't they do that in fashion? It should be random as hell. You shouldn't be telling people in advance, oh yeah, by the way, in 3 weeks, we're going to do an inspection. So whatever is wrong with your company, just make sure you fix it within 3 weeks. And then once we have done the audit, things can go back to normal. That is the worst process of doing audits I've ever seen in my entire life. How the hell can you audit someone and tell them in advance? What kind of audit is that? Like what? What kind of, that is literally a useless audit. That doesn't make sense. That is completely pointless. How can you tell someone in advance you're going to do an audit? That is so dumb. That is so stupid. That is actually the dumbest thing I've ever read this whole year, even though the year just started. We're only 4 years into the year. But that is so stupid. They tell factories in advance that they do audits. What kind of audit is that? Like, am I crazy, guys? What kind of audit is that? Critical Thinker is saying in US Pharma, they give hints for FDA inspections. Most systemic issues cannot be fixed quickly. Yeah, but you shouldn't be given any. If it's a real audit, people should not know in advance. It should be random. This is true. This is why. Italy is one of the largest exporters of luxury goods globally, as we've even seen in this article. They said it accounts for 50% to 55% of production of luxury goods worldwide. So, makes a lot of sense. Someone said how? Why they can? Because Arnault and Pinot are virtually the richest men in Europe. Yeah, I know why they do it. I know why they do it that way. Because obviously if they do audits that way, it means that they will never find any wrongdoing with any of these factories, which is why the only time they found wrongdoing, is when police became involved, and then it became a police investigation. Because now the police are not just investigating what happens on the day, they're looking at all your processes and they are eventually going to find something. That's very different to the auditors. So you cannot tell me that these brands actually care about the working conditions of their factories when they literally tell the factories in advance that they're about to do an audit. That is so funny. That is hilarious. That is actually hilarious. But anyway, reading on. That is funny. Anyway, continuing on, it says, in the notice, Adriano asked to analyze employment contracts, organizational charts, pay slips, and a dozen more documents. The checkup did take place, but it was more formal than substantial, investigators wrote of the audit. The assessment listed no irregularities. In March 2024, the police... so look, in 2023, on May 9th, Adamo Adriano told this factory on May 26th, we're going to do an audit. So they gave them 21 days to actually not 21 days, that's terrible mathematics, 17 days to actually fix whatever is wrong with their process. Do you know how long that is? They could literally just shut down the factory and be like, yeah, for the next days, we are literally just going to make sure that we fix everything possible fixable. We can change all the pay slips. We can shut up all the workers, do everything that we need to do to make sure that, we are not liable for any. That is so much time. That is so much time. That's more than 2 weeks. That is too much time. And then when they came in, Adamo Adriano, who does these audits, obviously, business as usual, said that there are no irregularities. And then in March 2024, of course, the police raid the factory and then find wrongdoing. Because when the police raid, they're not going to tell you in advance. Oh, yeah, the police are not going to call the factory and be like, oh, yeah, is this so-and-so factory? Oh, yeah, by the way, we are planning to do a police raid of your factory in 17 days. So whatever is wrong, make sure you hide it before we come. Make sure everything is sorted before we come because we're going to have a check at everything. So obviously when the police come in, that's when they find issues. So reading on, it says in March 2024, police entered Elisabetta Yang's workshop, which housed also a refectory and several bedrooms. They found 23 workers, 5 of which were irregular. The workers lived and worked in hygiene and health conditions that are below the minimum required, the court documents read. Adriano did not reply. Oh my God, they're cooking Adriano. This is this is unfortunate. They are cooking this person. Adriano did not reply to Reuters' request to comment with regards to the audit of Elisabetta Yang. Reuters was not able to contact Elisabetta Yang at the official email addresses cited by the local Chamber of Commerce. At this point in the article, they've basically said that Adamo Adriano has not commented to requests for at least like 10 different things. Like, damn. This is so true. Hello, can we come in on the 21st? No. Then is the 23rd better for you? Like, what? Leo said, in the restaurant business, the food inspectors do not tell you when they're going to do an inspection. They just show up and do a thorough inspection. Yeah, but that's how an inspection should be. And any inspection that is not random, it to me is just useless. It's pointless. Because like I've been making fun of, obviously I've been joking, but this is a very serious matter. I just like to, make it more entertaining. But this is very serious what we're talking about. Any like check or audit or inspection where you give me a chance to get ready beforehand is useless. It doesn't even make any sense. There's no context where that kind of thing will make any sense. It just doesn't make any sense. So the fact that they're saying that till now, that's how the audits are is insane to me. And it's good to actually have like pure evidence that this is how they do the audits. So moving forward, when these brands tell us that they care about sustainability and all these things, then we just refer back to this easily. Duke is saying Adriano did not get a break. He really did. I can imagine how, like, seeing how they're cooking this person. It's not going to be long before we see another statement that they're going to say Adriano did not reply or did not respond to request asking about how exactly he did these inspections. Or I don't know if it's a he or she or they, but the person did the inspections. Rachel says that's a perfect example of corporate capture of regulation. Facts. But reading on, as private actors, auditors cannot freely access factories or workshops outside agreed hours and may not collect documents that are not spontaneously submitted by suppliers. Two Italy-based luxury supply chain auditors told Reuters. So that's even worse. Not only do they tell factories and workshops in advance that they're going to do the audit, they can't even legally collect documents that aren't even submitted by the... So why do they do these audits then? What is the point? Why? I take it back. I know why they do these audits. I know why. Sorry. I take it back. Let me catch myself. They do these audits so they can have a certificate that says to consumers that they do these audits. So it looks like they actually care when they don't. That's why they do it. It's just for the certificate so that they can claim that, we care about the process and the working conditions of these things. Look at our certificate that we got. We've had 2 audits this year. That's why they do it. But what kind of audit? It's so hard not to make fun of these companies when, like, the audits, they tell them in advance. And then when the auditors come, even though these companies have had forever to prepare, they can't even collect documents that they aren't submitted. If they don't change these laws in the next 2 years, I do not want to hear about any sustainability with any like conglomerate brand. I do not want to hear it. Someone said consumers don't look at certificates. Some might. And it's also like, so they can claim they are above board. Like when anyone brings any of these companies into question, they can just say that, oh, we've had 2 audits. That's the reason why they do these audits, right? Not necessarily saying that every consumer is going to look at certificates and stuff, but it just helps. So that's why they do it, to be fair. That's why they do it. Everyone has to get paid and shareholders need cover. The sausage making is still grimy. This reminds me of the influencer trip she ended to be like, hey, our working conditions are great, actually, and our employers love us. Yeah, let's talk about this. Anytime, and I want you guys to realize this, right? Anytime you see a YouTube video of a luxury brand showing you through their factory, it's bullshit. Because they've even said it in this article, right? There are so many moving parts for the production process of a massive conglomerate and massive fashion brands. So yes, these fashion brands, some of them have factories in France and in Italy that make stuff where everyone is paid well and the working conditions are great. However, most companies, that is a tiny part of their production process. Like Louis Vuitton, for example, is known for making their specialty leather goods and trunks in like in Asnieres and stuff like that, right? However, every single thing that Louis Vuitton makes is not made in that kind of factory. So when you see a YouTube video and Louis Vuitton is like, welcome to the Louis Vuitton factory. Everyone here is is treated well. Everyone is paid well and is well, compensated. When they have those stupid ass YouTube videos, it's bullshit. Don't fall for it, because that is like 0.1% of the whole supply chain of the company. So it's bullshit, right? So going back into this like Shein trip where they invited influencers to one specialty factory where they're like, look at the working conditions, things aren't actually as bad as people say, it's bullshit. Which is why when the police actually do an investigation, they'll start finding loads of stuff, right? So never believe any of those stupid ass YouTube videos. Every time I see them, I roll my eyes, because it's like, I've worked in the fashion industry long enough to know that this company does not have one factory. So them showing me one factory and showing French people working in, some amazing looking factory literally is pointless to me. Like, it means nothing to me. And sometimes I'll watch those videos and see the comments of people being like, oh my God, this is why I love this brand. I appreciate the craftsmanship. I'm like, damn. It's a shame, because it's not their fault. Like, obviously, I've worked in the industry for long enough to know these things. And maybe the people watching this stream, you follow content creators like me who talk about these things. So you would know. The average person doesn't know, unfortunately. And that's why these brands get away with it. But I'm telling you guys, the guys watching now, when you see those videos, because they're all over the internet, you'll see like a visit to a Chanel factory. You'll see a visit to all these different factories, a Louis Vuitton factory, and they'll be like the craftsmanship and all this stuff. Don't believe it. 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 But anyway, moving on. The time allocated for on-site inspections is often too short to examine documents and interview employees, these people said. That's even worse. So we're just going from bad to worse to terrible. The first thing they said was that they tell them in advance, so they have time in advance to prepare for these things. The second thing they said is that they are only allowed access to documents that are submitted to them. And the third thing they said is that they have limited time to even go through these documents for these inspections and checks. That's insane. But moving on. 5 Tuscany-based luxury chain workers employed at separate workshops serving major brands confirmed to Reuters workshop owners knew in advance of the audit and would clear their premises. Yeah, this is exactly what we're saying. But it's logical. You don't need to read an article to know that when an inspection is about to happen, they're obviously going to clear the premises. Obviously. But let's just read it on the article anyway. But it's common sense. 5 Tuscany-based luxury chain workers employed at separate workshops serving major brands confirmed to Reuters, there's supposed to be a comma there, workshop owners knew in advance of the audit and would clear their premises and prep staff on what answers to give monitoring teams on the day of an inspection. All declined to be named for fear of losing their job. We used to say we only worked 4 hours a day as per our formal part-time contract, said Pakistani-born Abbas, who works in the leather-making hub of Prato. But how could they think we were making 1,300 bags a day with 50 workers employed, only 4 hours a day? Abbas, who said he worked 14 hours a day, 6 days a week, added. On the day of the audit, employees with part-time contracts were asked to leave as soon as they finished their formal shift, but had to come back and continue their work after the auditors left, he added. Another worker, also from Pakistan and employed at a separate leather workshop in Florence area, said factory owners warned workers when the inspection would take place and asked them to lie about their working hours. Fabio Roya, president of the Court of Milan, told Reuters that companies don't invest enough in their control systems and don't normally question the extremely cheap prices contractors offer to provide goods and services. Small fashion brand Alvaro Martini, famed for leather bags decorated with geographical map patterns, was also targeted by the Italian inquiries for allegedly subcontracting work to Chinese-owned firms in Italy that mistreated workers. The Alvaro Martini Group, careful in selecting direct suppliers, but the use of sub-suppliers was not actually checked properly. Ilaria Romoni, who served as court administrator overseeing its operations until October, said in an interview, "The group, which is no longer under court administration, did not respond to a request for comment. It stated in September it was unaware of the illegal behavior occurring within its supply chain. Dior and Armani are still under special judicial oversight as part of Milan's investigation into labor exploitation." So guys, that is the update on the processes of, these luxury brands and the specifics of the investigation that went into Dior and Armani specifically. That is the article and that is the update. But yeah, you guys now have the facts and you guys now have all the information that shows and proves that these luxury brands obviously don't care. That is they are crazy. They're prepping their workers to say that they only work 4 hours, and immediately the auditors leave, they tell all the workers to come back and, to continue work as usual. Absolutely insane. 1,300 with 50 workers would be about 65 bags per person each day. Around 1 bag every 10 minutes for 14 hours. Horrific. Yeah, facts. Facts. Completely horrific. Completely. And it's just funny that... Do you know the funniest thing about all these companies that say, oh, we couldn't have known? The police, all they had to do was do a random check and they found out everything, because obviously these companies clean everything up when they know auditors are coming. So if these luxury brands sent their own auditors to go, then at a random time, they would see all this stuff anyway. So of course they are aware of it. Just legally, they can dissociate themselves because there is nowhere where they've actually admitted to being aware of these things. So they can legally get away with dissociating themselves from the story and saying, oh, we had no clue that this was going on. We had absolutely no clue. So yeah, this is the luxury fashion industry. This is the luxury fashion industry. And you guys know me, I'm all about balance. For as much as I critique these fast fashion brands, luxury fashion brands, a lot of them are just as culpable. They're not as bad as the fast fashion brands, but they're still bad. A lot of them. Someone said that's the worst part. Companies just end these contracts and pretend that's the solution, and the workers are left stranded. They have legal contracts the workers sign, and then the real contracts and cash pay packets of extra hours so they don't have to report it or pay tax. That's also true. They can also use that as a tax write-off because they can't own up to doing something illegal. So if workers don't have the right to work legally for more than 4 hours, then obviously the other hours that they are working has to be off the books. Otherwise, they'll be liable for illegal working practices. So obviously, it's also a way that they can avoid paying tax, because a lot of those hours that are illegal that these workers are working are not on the books, obviously, because these companies can't be liable for stuff like that. Or, well, they don't want to be liable for stuff like that. So there we go. Kay says, I'm thinking about buying the LV carry-all bag. It ranges from 2,600 to 3,500. Do you think it's worth it? I mean, I'm not really in a position to say what is and isn't worth it. If you really like it and you feel like, you would use it for a really long time, then I would say completely buy it. If your question is it worth the price? Then no, you're kind of paying for the bag. But if you like it, I'm not going to tell someone exactly what to do with all your money. I just tell people the information and then do with it what you will. Also, yes, Al Jazeera did have a really good documentary that came out. I think it was not too long ago, actually, that I watched recently. I'm planning on reacting to it on Patreon. Because the good thing about Patreon that some of you might not know is that you don't get copyrighted the same way that you do on YouTube. So if I tried to react to the documentary on YouTube, it would get blocked and no one would see it. Which is why the only place I can react to stuff like that is on Patreon, literally. It's the same thing for a lot of sustainable labels for food. If you have the money, you can claim to be a green company. Yeah, because you just pay for all these bullshit auditors to come and audit your company, and then you get this pointless certificate that says that everything is above board. That's how a lot of these brands and these companies function. This YouTube channel runs on your support. If you want to support the channel, you can subscribe to my Patreon. You'll gain access to exclusive content that includes everything from my Patreon podcast, where I give a behind the scenes insight into the fashion industry, as well as a fashion book club where I review my favorite fashion books. You can also check out my fashion ebook, which highlights the best fashion journalists to follow, definitions of common fashion terminology, and how to determine what a good source of fashion information is. The links to everything are in the description below.